All right, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 8 in my Elisity Cognitive Trust video series. Today, we're going to be talking about industry compliance and certification standards and where Elisity fits into it all. So as you can imagine, we're talking to a lot of customers in pretty much every single vertical: healthcare, manufacturing, or other industrial environments, traditional campus, carpeted space, you name it. What we've noticed here is that there are growing internal and external pressures to meet industry-specific compliance and standards. Now, these compliance and certifications have been around for quite some time. I mean, it's nothing new. However, with the massive increase in business impacting cybersecurity incidents over the past several years, with an alarming upwards trend, compliance and standards are even more relevant and critical. It's to the point now where most cyber insurance companies are also mandating that compliance and standards have to be met in order for them to continue covering the organization in the event of a breach. As a matter of fact, insurance requirements are becoming stricter as premiums continue to rise, and many healthcare providers that we work with have been required to submit proof of network segmentation during renewals. It doesn't matter who you work for or what your company does, pressure to meet industry compliance and standards is a real thing. This urgency to implement solutions to meet these standards can come from your leadership, your customers, your partners, and the industry as a whole. If you haven't yet felt these pressures, get ready because they're coming. I would highly recommend you get serious about it now before your organization becomes a victim and your pressure to implement a solution to meet compliance requirements is due to a massive loss of sensitive data, intellectual property, and money. While doing my own research on the most common standards and certifications, I came to the realization that pretty much all of them mandate some level of network segmentation. Traditionally, network segmentation was a very difficult task, and not a lot of organizations actually had the resources to take it on. We spent most of our time hardening the outside of our network, building this impenetrable wall around our assets, which is great, and it's still important, but we totally disregarded the inner core of our network. And that's where the majority of threats are coming from today. And it's not like we forgot about the inside of the network. It's always been in our mind. I mean, if you're a network architect or a security architect, you know it's been there nagging you at the back of your mind. But implementing effective segmentation within an environment is a daunting task. And the legacy ways of doing this with firewalls and IP-ACLs, VLANs, VRFs, or a NAC isn't as effective as it should be. It's operationally and financially expensive and majorly disruptive to the production network. I actually have an entire video on why these legacy network-centric methods of segmentation are falling short. So I recommend for you to go to our resources page and watch that episode when you get a chance. But today, I want to go over some of these standards and certifications and have Taylor, my technical marketing engineer, show you in real time how it needs to be done today. Here's a small sample of compliance and standards I was studying, just a few of them, and you can see how they are spread out across all industries. But the common thread among them all is network segmentation. It's pretty evident that a properly segmented network can greatly improve your organization's security posture. And as a matter of fact, the MITRE ATT&CK framework for enterprises drives home this point. Proper micro-segmentation at a minimum solves 4 of the critical components of this framework, those being reconnaissance, initial access, lateral movement, and impact. Again, a previous episode actually goes into great detail on these 4 critical components of the MITRE ATT&CK framework for enterprises and how Elisity elegantly solves for them. So please check out that video. Now, if you haven't heard of Elisity, I want to do a quick review on how we approach this universal challenge of network segmentation. Elisity is the cloud-delivered identity-based micro-segmentation solution, and it is deployed in less than a couple days, allowing you to implement actionable network segmentation policy with very little time and no friction. Since we're cloud-based, 100% software, and leverage your existing access infrastructure to build a policy enforcement grid, time to value is realized rapidly. There's no waiting period to plan and implement hardware and no complex on-premise appliances and software to deploy. The solution is completely decoupled from network design or topology, leverages extremely lightweight software containers, and has zero impact on your production network during deployment. We fully deploy Elisity in our customer networks without a single lost packet and zero downtime. Even after working on this Elisity platform for over a year, I'm still blown away at how easy we have made it to implement effective and comprehensive network segmentation policies. And this is coming from a guy that's been doing this for 15 years using all of those legacy network security functions. Instead of starting at the network level and working our way up, we start with asset discovery and identity, a robust identification engine built into our customer dedicated cloud control center with connectors to other identity solutions handles the attribute learning process of users, devices, and applications and maps them to policies you create totally based off of those learned attributes. This is why we call it identity-based microsegmentation. When creating policy, you aren't referencing network constructs like IPs and MACs and VLANs, which are spoofable, ephemeral, and provide really no context around the legitimacy or identity of an asset. Instead, you're referencing those learned asset attributes such as device type, device model, OS type, owner, Active Directory group, manufacturer, version, etc., as match criteria in your policy. This means that profiling, grouping assets with commonalities, and applying policy is totally dynamic, and the applied policy follows the asset no matter where it shows up on the network. Its IP, MAC, VLAN, whatever network construct does not matter to the administrator, only the identity of the asset does. One of the best parts of this solution to me is that it can onboard the most widely deployed access switches as Elisity policy enforcement nodes so that there is no requirement to change anything on your network today. This is beautiful for customers trying to segment brownfield environments, have supercritical processes running on them, and cannot afford a single second of downtime. I'm going to hand it off now to my technical marketing engineer, Taylor, to give you a couple industry-specific demos of how it all works. Taylor?
Thanks, Dana. I'll try to make this quick. So looking back at those 6 different compliance standards that we've been talking about, we can see here in a little more detail some of the ways that our microsegmentation strategy that we've designed here at Elisity can help organizations reach compliance. And it's not just segmentation that we're helping with. Many of these compliance standards have requirements for maintaining inventories of assets and identifying potential threats. There are requirements for traffic flow analytics and event logging, really understanding the traffic and communication between assets on your network. And there are requirements that involve the ability to group and prioritize assets based on a variety of factors. We have a solution for every one of these requirements, and all the slides I just showed are subcategories of the NIST framework, but most other regulations actually cross-reference these specific requirements. A perfect example of that being HIPAA, and I'll flash that up on screen really quick. Since we've talked in the context of how features of our platform help solve these standards requirements, I want to take just a couple minutes to show our current implementation of these features. But we'll start with asset inventories. And as we see device traffic or attachments from devices behind an Elisity Virtual Edge node, which is what we call an access switch onboarded with Elisity, we add those devices or applications to our asset inventories in Cloud Control Center. Then we can compare that device data to any connected CMDB to identify unknown devices or pull data from any connected device identity platforms like Clarity or Metagate to further improve data about the device. So from there, we group devices into policy groups, which are endpoints of our policy. Policy groups are the mechanisms that we use to implement network segmentation, not traditional constructs like VLANs, firewalls, or access control lists. So you can actually visualize your network segmentation easily using our policy matrix. So think of this policy matrix like a segmented grid where each box on the grid represents the intersection between 2 policy groups and the rules that dictate how those groups are allowed to communicate. Policy groups allow us to group assets of priority using any criteria that we want, from broader classifications like device type printer down to fine details and organizational information like who manages the device or any combination in between. We can also switch views here to quickly see what traffic flows have been observed between each group, down to the protocol and the number of flows that have been observed. Our analytics page gives insight into outliers and potential risks while showing record of every event and every flow that's been observed on the network. Okay, so before we have even implemented a policy, we're helping meet compliance in several key areas. But policy is where the rubber meets the road. So this is where we're able to begin meeting very specific demands, such as isolating end-of-life systems. So as many of you know, organizations often have legacy technology that no longer receives support or updates from vendors. And often this technology is very hard to replace due to the specific processes in which these devices are used. Certain compliance standards require that these systems be replaced or isolated from the rest of the network through segmentation. So maybe you have some workstations or servers that are running an end-of-life operating system, and you need to isolate these machines to reach compliance. With Elisity, this process is as simple as a few clicks, so check it out. So here we are in Cloud Control Center, and we are in our graphical policy visualization matrix, and we have a policy group created for OT industrial workstations. And we can see that we don't have a lot of policies in place for this device. So if we actually move over to that device, we can actually view our network access from here. And we can see we have access to our printer, we have access to a temperature and humidity sensor, our PLC controller, an HMI workstation, and a couple of other IoT devices on the network. So let's isolate this device with just a few clicks. Obviously, this industrial workstation needs access to a couple of things like Modbus sensors or PLCs, but we can quickly deploy a denial policy to every other policy group. I'm using our policy mass deployment feature. So we'll just start here. So we'll go ahead and shift click here all of the intersections between policy groups that we want to deny traffic. Once we've selected all these boxes, we'll click Add Security Profile, and we can see we already have pre-built security profiles for allow all and deny all. All we need to do is select our denial security profile and click Deploy. So we've just deployed this set of denial policies. Let's move over to our workstation and see how our network access has changed. So we can see in real time, as we deploy this policy, we're denying access to all of those devices that this workstation doesn't need access to, while we're allowing access to other devices that this workstation needs access to. The next step here would be to deploy granular policies from this workstation to this temperature and humidity sensor and this PLC controller, and move on down our path of network segmentation down to granular policies between devices. I would encourage you to check out the other videos in this series and check out our knowledge base page to learn more about what Elisity can do for you.
So that's a wrap for this episode. I highly recommend you check out our resources page on elisity.com to learn more about the solution and how it will significantly improve your organization's security posture and provide key functionality to your network security arsenal. We live in a world now where organizations of all types are under attack, and many times you may not even realize it. The team here at Elisity is standing by in order to assist you in achieving effective network segmentation so that you can quickly and easily meet compliance and standards that your organization is focused on. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.